local community and figured out ways to improve it. In several instances, actually, what happened was the kids, they explored their neighborhood park or like a public space, and they figure out a deficiency, and then they would invite the Parks and Rec folks to come in, or a city council member to come in. And in one classroom, the mayor came in, and the kids presented a proposal about the changes that they should be made, and then those changes were enacted. And their slide was fixed. Their rocket slide was fixed. There were more garbage cans installed in a playground. And just think that as a 7-year-old, you can actually, most of the times when you think about civic activism and, park projects, it's like, oh, okay, let's clean up the park. Right. No, they're not going to clean up the park, these 7-year-olds. They told the city to come and clean up the park, and to see that enacted, I think was great. And another project, they designed a good or service to sell in their community, and they'd raise like hundreds of dollars, just from selling this in their community, that they would then donate to a group in need that they, again, the Voice and Choice, they selected or organization in their community to donate that money to. To think, I can do this. And so for us, I think that was a huge accomplishment, thinking that these kids can have the tools and skills in order to make a difference.
And to empower them at such a young age is fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. I think it gets back to the global citizen piece too. That you can be part of a citizen in your community, but in your school, but it can go larger than that too, and you can make a real impact. Beyond. Just beyond your own immediate world.
Yeah, the sooner they realize that, the better.
I think, yeah, exactly. I know. And social studies is being an informed and active citizen who really wants to be a change agent. It's really, a really powerful message to send.
So with success, we know there's challenges that come along.
Absolutely.
So what were some of the challenges, whether it was with planning, implementing, authentic audience, whatever parts of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. First, just from a researcher standpoint, just designing the curriculum, we found, and I just want to emphasize that to the audience of this podcast, is that this is not easy work, and it takes a lot of do-overs too, and then there's going to be missteps along the way, and it's really, really fun and exciting, but it's challenging, because you might have an amazing idea, and then when you go to sit down and actually turn it into a lesson that's actionable, you realize, oh no, I got to take a few steps back here. So, starting small and, thinking about, what is going to be manageable, and then realizing that there's just a lot of moving parts. So I think just the time involved, they're very time and labor intensive, a lot of rewriting, a lot of letting go too sometimes when you really get an idea you love and you want to, you just want to run with it, and then at some point you have to realize this is not going to be feasible, and you have to give up on that. And so, I think that can be challenging. In terms of the teachers actually implementing the curriculum, I wasn't the one implementing these curricula. The teachers they found, because they were social studies based, that just simply finding the time to do this was hard. First, finding time for social studies in general, and these lessons, they were 45 minutes each, and so typically if your time for social studies is only half an hour, that can be hard. So finding the time to do that. Teaching something new and unfamiliar is also really challenging. Again, it's that letting go piece. If you're a type A, like I am, this is hard to do, because it's planned, but it might go in a slightly different direction than you're anticipating. Your room's going to be a mess. There's just there's a lot of talking, so all of this stuff can be very, very difficult. I think is in sort of a paradigm shift in your teaching. I think another one is planning logistics. Arranging field trips, obtaining permission, to do a fundraiser, coordinating with the community members, getting family members to come in, even homework. Some of the times we had this homework where, with the history project, the students would go and interview an older adult in their family or a family friend about what life was like in the past. It was a really powerful, to be able to do an oral interview was so powerful, but it was homework, and so to, send that home multiple times, it's just challenging with young kids to get that back in. So there certainly were a lot of challenges. I think each one of them is surmountable, and each one of them is worth dealing with in order to get to the rewards, but just remembering that this is a process, and failure actually is really an opportunity to learn. That motto I take to heart with me whatever I do, but especially with project-based learning, because in every misstep there's an opportunity to figure out what went wrong and apply that for the next time around.
And tweak it.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not just for that one project you'll fix it. It's a life lesson you'll learn to go on, throughout when you design other projects.
Absolutely. So the teachers that you worked with, did they have PBL training, or how were they introduced to the whole concept, or did they already have some? How did that work?
Yeah, none of the teachers had training in PBL, and they had not taught with PBL, so it was brand new to them. Okay. So what we did was we had a 3-hour PD session that they attended, in which we introduced project-based learning, talked a little bit about our prior study. We introduced them to one of the units, the economics project, which is the first one they would be teaching. And so it was 3 hours, and then they were on their way. And then throughout the course of the year, we had 3 more like video projects, or video, I'm going to say like PD sessions kind of. Yeah, like maybe, I think they're averaged about 40 minutes or so. And that they would watch, it was like a video podcast, and so they would watch it before implementing their next project. But the other thing they had was they had instructional coaching. So we had research assistants, each assigned to one research assistant assigned to each, or a group of teachers, and they would visit them, I think, about twice a month. And then they were our research assistants, RAs, they were instructed to coach only on project-based learning. So they didn't coach on anything else, because again, we just wanted, to be able to make the claim that it was the curriculum, not like we were providing other coaching that could help them in other parts of their day. It was really just coaching for the curriculum. And so they would observe the lesson, and they would take writing field notes for our research purposes, but then they would talk to the teachers about, strategies for implementing the lessons, or managing the resources, or connecting to an audience member, that kind of thing. So there was the coaching, and then the initial PD session, and then the 3 subsequent PD sessions that were video, virtual, basically throughout the year.
And did you have teachers that were jumped in, all dove in the water and couldn't wait to take off, or were there teachers that were really resistant and halfway through, and I don't like this, and did you have kind of a real range, or most people in the middle?
You put your finger on it in terms of the range. There really were. There were some who would send us emails just saying how much they loved it, and wanting to share photos from what they were doing. And we had some who were just had bought into it and loved it. And others, I wouldn't say, it wasn't so much resistance so much as just finding the time. That was the biggest thing. Almost all the teachers talked about really enjoying the units. The projects were very explicitly spelled out. They're very, very detailed. And so they appreciated all the resources that we gave them, provided them the resources and everything, but it was really seemed to be not so much resistance as so much as like, I don't know when I can do this. I don't have time to do this. That was kind of what, some of the problems that we found. But there was certainly a range.
Yeah, I think a lot of teachers feel like it's a separate part of their day.
Right.
And we've been trying to work with teachers to infuse it where you can throughout your day.
Yeah.
And we have a social studies or science standard that they usually choose from too, so they kind of have that time. But like you say, the first thing out the window is social studies and science when you run out of time. So trying to infuse that into other parts of their day can be challenging, but so helpful once they're able to do that. Would you agree?
Exactly. And one of the things is our units are integrated with social studies and literacy. And so there's a huge writing component. And so we thought, well, if you can't fit it into social studies block, put it in your writing block. Because there's writing, throughout the whole unit. So we try to encourage them to think about other ways in which to do it. But again, it's an undertaking, and you needed that 45-minute block too. Uninterrupted time, really, because once the kids get out all the materials and everything, it was, you really needed that time investment. And I think it's just. You asked about resistance. Again, we didn't really find there was resistance, but it was more like, how do I do this? How do I do all this independent group time? My kids can't work in groups. We got a lot of that, like, how do I have my kids work in small groups, and how do they, do independent work when most of our work is at our desks, that kind of thing. I think there was just, I want to do it, but I don't know how, I'm challenged about how to do it.
And so you said you had basically 4 to 6 weeks, 20 lessons. Were most people able to really stick to that time frame? I know with our staff at Luton Elementary, we had trouble where projects were lasting much longer, and we have project nights there, so things toward the end got a little sloppy or not quite the way we wanted them to be. Or did you find that teachers, because this was, with instructional coaches coming out, it kind of stuck to the parameters?
No, we had some teachers who were really stayed on schedule, but most, I think, it ended up, just assemblies would come up, or Halloween or whatever, and then
snow days.
Right, exactly, yeah, anything, it would be extended. And then towards the end of the year, we really were trying to get these 80 lessons in. It was like, okay, we got to really ramp it up. So no, I would say there were only a handful of teachers who probably stuck within that 4 to 6 week. The other ones, it was a little bit more spread out. Still 80 lessons is still half the school year, and so you would think, well, even if you're doing it every other day, you could still do it. But even so, some teachers say, well, I only teach social studies twice a week,
right?
So then you don't have as much time, and then like you said, the anticipated days. So no, I would say there was a big range. Yeah. Some teachers would still be on economics, and then other teachers would be at the beginning of the history, which is the third unit.
Wow.
So there was
a big range. So if I was a brand new teacher, how would you tell me to get started with PBL?
So the first thing I would think about is, well, what project do you want to do? And I would think about like a real world problem or issue or something in your community or in your state or in the world really, that you think your kids would be interested in. So I would start with the project idea. Like, what do you want the kids to be doing? Like, what kind of difference, what kind of thing would they be interested in for 4 to 6 weeks that would sustain their attention, and so I think about that. Then I would think about, okay, but how would that, and I would think of a couple of them too. Okay. Like, I think it's important when we started this, we had several ideas running at the same time, and then we were able to sort of eliminate some, and then decide on the one that we wanted to do. And then I would think about, okay, which of these aligns with my standards? Like, I have to, and always keeping those standards, in the back of your head, like, how are you going to keep them aligned with the curriculum? You also might want to think about like a person or connection you have who could serve as that audience. If you decide that that's going to be an important part of your project, who could come in. Like in one of our projects, we had someone from the Visitors Bureau or a real estate person come in because the kids made these brochures of their local community to try to sort of sell their community, advertise their community. And so, do you have someone? Is there something you're particularly interested in? That you have a connection to, a family member or a friend, or someone in the government or something, who could come and be part of that authentic audience for the students. So, I think about that. But again, I think it really has to be interest to the student. It has to be aligned with the standards, and then I think it has to, really, it has to be substantive enough and engaging enough to last for a long period of time. I'd also think about like something that the students could work collaboratively on. Like, what is the thing they're going to produce? Is it like going to be a play or a multimedia presentation, or some kind of like letter writing campaign or whatever? Think about what is it? Could there be something they work on collaboratively and be able to do different components to it? The presentation is nice because if you have like a 26-slide presentation, 26 students in the class, it's a collaborative project, but then each child could be responsible for one slide. And so then you're able to hold each child accountable, but then you're also able to have them work together. I'd also think about like what subjects could be integrated, and I'm a huge believer in the power of integration. And so if that's the route you want to go, it's almost like impossible not to integrate. Think about a science or social studies topic, that's a really keen interest to the students. And then how can you integrate literacy and math? And with math, it's so easy. If you think anything would do with data and numbers, then you're able to integrate that in authentically. And then another idea is just to, and I'll share some resources with you, go and peruse and see what other schools have done. Like, the other thing is that, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. Like, go and Buck Institute has tons and tons of projects on there. You can search by grade level and topic, subject area, and just see what other people have done. And then you're going to make it, related to your own, local context in a way that's not there. So it'll be different. but maybe some resources will be there. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really fun to start from scratch. I also think it's a ton of work.
Yeah. It's what you're ready for.
Exactly. Yeah. And it might be that maybe one year you have one project that is your own that's starting from scratch, and another year you implement one that's already been designed but then tailored to your local community. Mm-hmm. And then see what are the affordances and constraints of each approach.
Great. So speaking of resources, where mm-hmm. would you point people in what direction for PBL resources?
So there's a number of places I'd go. One is the Edutopia website, and that's a terrific, Lucas Education, George Lucas Educational Foundation has provided a lot of money. They funded our work in part along with the Spencer Foundation, and so